Section 3. Preventing cross-contamination is vital in preventing foodborne illness. Proper food storage and protection must be a part of your everyday routine in your food establishment. We will discuss what you can do to make sure that you are following safe food storage and protection protocols. To prevent cross-contamination from occurring, we can create physical barriers. Physical barriers can be implemented by assigning specific equipment to each type of food. For example, the same cutting board should not be used for both raw chicken and raw beef. Instead, you should use one cutting board for raw chicken and another cutting board for raw beef. This creates a physical barrier and protects food from cross-contamination. Work surfaces, equipment, and utensils also need to be cleaned and sanitized after each task. Cross-contamination can also be prevented by creating procedural barriers. An example of this may be preparing raw meat, fish, poultry, and ready-to-eat foods at different times, starting with the least potentially hazardous if you are using the same prep table. It is also helpful to purchase ingredients that require minimal preparation. One of the most important ways to prevent cross-contamination is to make sure that there is never any bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. As we have discussed previously, a ready-to-eat food is any food that can be consumed immediately. These can be foods like raw fruits and vegetables, breads, or cooked foods. Since bare hand contact on ready-to-eat foods is prohibited, food employees will need to use gloves, deli sheets, spatulas, or other utensils or dispensing equipment to serve ready-to-eat foods. To prevent cross-contamination while serving food, you should store any serving utensils properly. The utensils need to be stored in the food with the handle extended above the rim of the container. The utensils also need to be stored on a clean, sanitized food contact surface. Food should be protected from contaminants with the use of sneeze guards or covers. It is useful to prepare foods in small batches so that the food is used and served quickly. Preventing cross-contamination when serving ice has similar protocols. To prevent contamination, ice scoops need to be properly cleaned and sanitized and be stored in a clean and sanitized area. If you choose to store your ice scoop in the ice, it needs to be stored with the handle up and the handle out of the ice. All ice scoops must have handles to prevent bare hand contact. Ice scoops must also be in good repair and made from approved materials. Glass ice scoops are not acceptable. Ice must be the only item stored in the ice cooler. No other food or items used for consumption are allowed. Finally, to avoid cross-contamination when tasting foods, food employees may not use a utensil more than once to taste food that is to be sold or served. Proper food storage will not only protect your food establishment from the possibility of cross-contamination, but it should also create a more efficient, organized kitchen. The first step of safe food storage is date marking. Any food that is cooked or prepared on site must be stored in a container that is properly labeled. Any food that is made on site that will be used greater than 24 hours or is leftover product shall be labeled with the day or date that the food is to be consumed on the premises, sold, or discarded. The day the food is cooked or prepped is day 1. After the food is cooked or prepared and date marked, it can be held at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower for up to 7 days. Date marking protects foods against the growth of Listeria-monocytogenes. Date marking also applies to prepackaged, ready-to-eat deli meats. The day the seal is broken is considered day 1. The product is still to be consumed, sold, or discarded by the end of day 7. Foods that have been removed from their original containers should be labeled with the common name of the food, unless they are easily identifiable, such as dry pasta. Any TCS foods that are prepared on site must be date marked and have a label with the name of the food on the container. Food stored in coolers or refrigerators should be stored at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Refrigeration equipment should be monitored frequently to ensure proper holding temperatures, and visible thermometers should be placed in every cooler or fridge. Foods must also be stored in a way that limits the chance of cross-contamination. One method of doing this involves storing foods based on cook temperatures. As you can see in the diagram, ready-to-eat foods are placed on the top shelves, with raw fish stored below it, followed by whole raw meat, raw ground meat, and finally raw poultry. In this example, foods that have the highest required internal temperatures are stored at the bottom, followed by the food with the next highest required internal temperature, and so on. Where frozen food storage is concerned, freezers and freezer equipment must be able to keep foods solidly frozen. Freezer temperatures should be monitored and checked frequently to make sure that they are working properly. Any TCS foods that have been prepared on-site or ready-to-eat foods that have been separated into smaller portions should be date marked and labeled. Food storage rotation is also important. First in, first out, or FIFO, is a good way to remember the proper way to store perishable foods. Food stocks should also be stored so that the food that will expire first is used first, and foods that have a later expiration date are stored last. Using FIFO ensures that food inventory is rotated so that the oldest foods are used first. Dry food storage areas must be clean, dry, and organized. Food should be stored in designated dry food storage areas. All food should be stored at least 6 inches off of the floor where it will not be exposed to splash, dust, or other contamination. Pressurized beverage containers, food that is cased in waterproof containers such as bottles or cans, and milk containers in plastic crates can be stored on a clean floor where it will not be exposed to moisture. Food that is to be returned for credit, redemption, or items that are returned for damage, spoiled, or recalled items must be stored in an area that is separate from other food, equipment, utensils, linens, and single-service items. Not all areas are appropriate for food storage. Some prohibited areas include locker rooms, dressing rooms, toilet rooms, mechanical rooms, garbage rooms, under sewer lines that can have potential drips, under leaking water lines, under open staircases, or under any other source of contamination. There are also guidelines to follow when storing utensils, linens, single-service items, and single-use articles. All utensils, linens, and single-service or single-use articles should be stored in a clean and dry location where they will not be exposed to splash, dust, or other contamination. They should also be stored 6 inches off of the floor. After articles are cleaned and sanitized, they should be stored in a self-draining position that allows air drying, and once dry should be stored covered and inverted. Single-service and single-use articles should be stored in the original protective package or by other means that protects them from contamination until they are to be used.